Okay, enough's enough. Now, what's the next line?
Tolerates.
May only pass through once a day. No, what's the next line?
Tolerates these sufferings and get a rightful claim of the.
Well, not just tolerate. Devotee doesn't just tolerate. The Mayavadis may also tolerate. They don't accept that Krishna's in a picture. They do tolerate.
He accepts them as a part of his own misdeeds.
That's true. The Mayavadis may also recognize that.
Waits for the mercy.
Wait for the mercy, but in that state, what does the devotee do? He tolerates,
And continue with his
thanks the Lord in various ways. We can see that from many different angles. Not just the one that I deserve it, but it's also purifying. It also has many other factors involved. Teaching others. What else? And what does the devotee do in that state? Does he simply sit there tolerating and waiting?
Keep growing with his service.
Yes, he could. Hopefully, if he's able to. Service indeed, but specifically, in that state, he continues praying to the Lord, glorifying the Supreme Personality of God. He doesn't ask for anything in return. He knows that the Lord is his master, his life and soul, whatever level he's on, and he totally depends upon the Lord. He's surrendered. Stage of surrender. Such a person is a?
right element of the.
Yes, he's eligible candidate to enter into the
Kingdom of God.
Kingdom of God. And a beautiful purport is there, put together by Hridayananda Maharaj and others, quoting Acharyas in general, particularly Sridham Maharaj, the original commentator, at least in our line, or in the line of Lord Chaitanya, states clearly on the Srimad Bhagavatam. And one very important, every line is important, but one important line is there, which is very significant in regards to become the legitimate inheritor of the kingdom of God. And he gives the example. What example does he give?
The son and the king.
Pardon?
The son and the king.
The son and the?
King.
Doesn't have to be a king. It could be a king. But the father and the son. The father, normally speaking, a person writes a will. You know this in different countries it's called differently. A will is a document which you write to explain what should happen to your assets, maybe your body also, etc. after you die. So much for this one, so much for that one, like that. So generally, of course, if there's a wife present, then maybe depends on the culture. But let's say it's normal, well, the son's not alive, let's say, the wife is not alive, rather. So yeah, usually the son inherits that property. They wouldn't necessarily need to write a will. It was pretty straightforward in Vedic times. Nowadays it's not. But it was a standard practice that when the father died, the son, the oldest son, would inherit. There would be different systems, of course, for the children. They'd all get. But the eldest son was usually the main inheritor of the responsibility of the father, like that. Looking after the mother, looking after the property, and so on. So he gives an example, the same thing. One who is a devotee in this mood becomes an inheritor of the kingdom of God. But he says there's one qualification to inherit the property of the father. Some of you know it very well. So don't say anything if you know it, but just try to work out what is the main qualification that the son requires in order to inherit the father's property. Those who know don't say, don't speak. Isn't that what Prabhupada said? Those who know don't speak, those who don't know speak. Sometimes that is the case, but that's not what Prabhupada said. But in this case, yes. I want you to try to use your, let's say, conscious intelligence. What would be the main qualification for a son to inherit the father's property?
It needs to be a good son.
Good son. Okay, that would be probably a common answer, and it's certainly got truth in that, because But it's not absolute, because even if you're a bad son, you may be the only son, or all the sons may be bad, or even if they're good, the law may be that the oldest son inherits it anyway, even if he's bad. There may be many ways of circumventing that very obvious statement. In one sense, a good son, the father would like to, but he might have a sudden accident and die without being around to make that clear, But there's another one which is more significant in terms of the absolute necessity. You probably know. You've probably read it. You know the verse, so you know the purport, I'm sure. Anyone doesn't know? Mayapur Chandra knows. He's just putting another suggestion forward. Oh no, I know you know. He knows. Yes, well, Ratanana, if you don't know, we're going to send you back to school right now. Of course, you haven't studied the 10th canto in Bhakti Vaibhava yet, have you?
No, we studied that in Bhakti Shastri. From the Bhakti Rasamrita.
10th canto?
No, that verse.
That verse, yes. Well, it comes up in Nectar of Devotion, you see. There's a chapter called Expecting the Lord's Mercy. And that's the verse that is based on that verse. But you do know, surely you know. Anyone? Okay, say what you think.
So you have to wait for the time.
No, you don't necessarily. You can kill your father before. Some people do. At least they try to.
So you have to patiently wait.
Huh?
You have to patiently wait before the
Patiently, well, that's the statement, that you patiently wait. That's also there in the verse. The devotee is very patient. He tolerates patiently waiting for the Lord's mercy, whatever form it comes in is up to him. But there's one other thing which hasn't been mentioned, maybe more, but there's one most significant thing of all. And there's no way, absolutely no way, you will inherit even 1 square inch if you don't fulfill this particular fact. Somebody who knows can tell us? You were hesitant to say. Mahananda?
The son has to stay alive.
The son has to be alive. If the son dies before the father, he can inherit nothing. He's dead. He's not there to inherit anything. Right? That's the first qualification. Other things may be there too, but this is an absolute need. If you're not alive, you cannot. You're not even mentioned. You're not on the list. You're dead. So in relationship to that, Sridham says there's only a devotee simply has to stay alive in Krishna consciousness. Don't die. Don't fade out. Don't bloop. Even if you bloop, you have to come back again, but you have to have another crack at it. Of course, you may have to have another crack at it anyway. Staying alive is more than just mechanically, unconsciously, mindlessly rumbling your rounds and struggling against your mind's demands to follow 4 regulated principles, but in your heart you're still grabbing hold of them. It does expect you to be a little Krishna conscious, But stay alive is the main thing. What happens within that, just like we said, or some of you said, with the son, he may stay alive, but that doesn't guarantee either that he's going to inherit the father's kingdom. The father may not like him, and may sign it off to his dog or something. He gives everything to his dog. Sometimes people leave the things to their dog, ignoring it. I know quite a few devotees, and some of them from rich families, when they became devotees, they were taken off of the will. Completely taken off. We have a famous example in France of that. One of our devotees there was taken off. His mother was very rich, but he ended up, his name wasn't on the will. She took it off. He would have inherited millions. He didn't get anything. Well, we hope so. No names mentioned. So then the other factors come into place, but without that, the other factors mean nothing. If you're a good son, or if you're patient, and so on and so forth. Play your cards right. Let's read on. Where do we get to? I'm not sure we got to. Let's read on from here. But although it is inauspicious for the jiva to think himself the enjoyer and seer, it is even more inauspicious for the jiva to attempt suicide by killing the enjoyer and the seer. This is the Mayapur. That's even more inauspicious. Better to be a sense enjoyer, thinking them to be a hangman's rope around the neck. And they think everything that has form, personality, is to be destroyed, to be removed, to be negated. Hiranyakashipu thought he was the seer of the pillar in his hall. Like that, my mother said, when I decided to join the temple after a long time of informing her, many months I told her, but eventually it came. Well, no, it was another example. I asked her when I was a young kid, does God exist? I don't know how, I was not even 10 years old, maybe younger. Does God exist? And she said, of course he doesn't. Otherwise I'd be able to see him. I can't see him. Hiranyakashipu moved. So Hiranyakashipu thought he was the seer of the pillar in his hall and desired to observe the existence of Vishnu or to measure Vishnu. Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj says anyone who thinks they can, let's say, measure. Whatever can be measured, he said, or what we think can be measured, is Maya. We cannot measure anything in reality. Well, we can try to measure our own progress in spiritual life, but even that is usually another factor involved. And adjudging himself the enjoyer, he perceived Prahlad as his son, the object of his enjoyment. But the Lord of inconceivable powers revealed his inconceivable eternal form to Hiranyakashipu and destroyed that seer, and was very merciful to Prahlad, who regarded himself as the object to be seen or enjoyed by Vishnu. Therein is another angle, that we have to not just see that which we see in this world as being an object of Krishna's enjoyment, but we also have to see that we, as the so-called seer in this world, are also an object of Krishna's enjoyment. Not just that which is seen, but that which we understand as the drashta, or the seer, we are also meant to be that which is seen or enjoyed by the Lord. We look around, everything we see, we tend to think of what that's got to do with me. We like or reject. But it's not ours to like or reject. It belongs to Krishna. You're seeing things. And how do we develop that mentality? That would be a question, wouldn't it? How to develop this type of mentality? Or this type of perception? Can anyone suggest?
You could learn the peace formula.
The peace formula, okay, keep that always in your mind. What is the peace formula? What is it? This, like this, isn't it? What's that sign they have? You mean we should wear badges like that? The peace formula, huh? Excuse me?
The Bhaktaram Yakitaram Samsara.
Oh, Bhaktaram. Bhakta, that's bogi. Bhaktaram. Yagitam. Japamam. And one who sees like this, what do they see? Krishna is the supreme enjoyer. He is the proprietor of everything. Everything that happens to include you also. Everything. Well, everything but not me. What else? He is the... What is he?
Maybe revealing what will be said, but I think Bhaktisiddhanta says, when you are in the temple, you choose the most advanced devotees and you place yourself in front
Yeah, you're going on to the next point. But finishing off this point, one more point there. He's the proprietor, he's the enjoyer, and he is the friend. Sridham. Best, the real friend. We have no other real friend. We're looking to imitate. We're looking for reflections, but he's the real friend, isn't he? Krishna is the real friend of all living entities. And then you can attain real peace. So that type of vision, or let's say application of knowledge in a sense, learning to see things in relationship to that verse, can bring actual happiness. So that's a Shastric approach. We could say, by trying to see through the eyes of Scripture. What's that called? Shastra? Chakshu. Seeing through the eyes of the Scripture. That's why Scriptures are there. However, we were reading this morning, actually it was in the previous chapter, it was called his statements on sannyas. So, one of the most revolutionary, not in terms necessarily of what we normally would see as a revolutionary thing now, but when he did it, when he accepted sannyas, for instance. Now, that was quite that created more than anything else a kind of a real reaction amongst those, especially the caste Goswamis and the Brahmin community, even the Vaishnava community in Bengal. There was no Vaishnava sannyas in Bengal. Most of North India, it didn't exist. It was there in the sampradayas of Madhvacharya and Ramanujacharya, but not in the Gaudiya line. So when Saraswati Thakur took sannyas, he took it in an unconventional way because there were no Vaishnava sannyasis to take from. There were Babajis only. So, and plus, he assumed, by the way, with his father's blessings, he took on the Brahmin thread. He was not coming from a Brahmin family. Bhaktivinoda was a Kayastha. They were not considered Brahmins. Bhaktivinoda did not wear a Brahmin thread. And Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj did. So that was also totally unconventional. So he was attacked left, right and center for these, adopting this dress of a sannyasi, the position of a sannyasi, everything about it, accepting the sannyas order or accepting the Brahmin thread, was completely contrary to the thoughts of most of even the Vaishnavas, what to speak of the Smartas and so on. So it was quite opposition was there. And they retorted to Shastric statements to support it. There's a verse, I don't know the Sanskrit, but there's a verse there in the Brahma Vaivata Purana, which states that in this age of Kali, the order of sannyas is prohibited. Offering of cows in sacrifice, horses in sacrifice, acceptance of sannyas, what's the other one? Begetting children in the womb, brother or whatever it is, somebody else anyway, whatever. This is all prohibited in Kali Yuga. So there, it sounds like a pretty strong argument, doesn't it? But that, he said, is from the Brahma Vaivata Purana, which happens to be a Rajasic Purana. It's for those in the mode of passion, for those who are ambitious for material advancement, and for those who are on the path of karma. It is prohibited. So the karma sannyas, even the jnana sannyas comes into that category, are prohibited in this age. According to the Shastras, for those in that particular, consciousness, in that particular line, is prohibited. But there's no prohibition for those in the line of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There are many sannyasis. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was himself stayed in Chaitanya Charitamrita, his closest associates in Puri, a whole group of sannyasis. Paramananda, Brahmananda, so many sannyasis were there around him in Puri. And we see in our line there have been sannyasis in our line, of course we call the 6 Goswamis. So then they started attacking the dress. that the 6 Goswamis did not adorn the red dress of the sannyasi. Our dresses were a little mild. Your dress is a little bit redder, but the dress of the sannyasis was quite red. It was redder than ours. Mine's not even pink. It's just pastel kind of color. I don't know what color it is. Creamy pastel, pinky. But theirs will be more bold, more clear, like that. All of this, various reasons. And they quoted various things. Lord Chaitanya, he took sannyas from Keshava Bharati, who was in an impersonal Brahma. But there was the sannyas of Shankaracharya was there, but not amongst Vaishnavas. So different statements. But he was undisturbed because for preaching he was willing to take on all of these challenges which were there, knowing that this was required to establish firmly the teachings of Lord Chaitanya and to start a mission, not just to be a devotee. He was a missionary. The Babajis, there were many Vaishnava Babajis, bona fide or otherwise, but they would keep away from the public generally. They would not associate with people in general. They were not preaching hardly at all. So he was a preaching mission. He had this agenda to preach. So he accepted this also from the point of view, two angles of vision, but one, because sannyas is below Babaji, below the Paramahamsa. Sannyas is considered to be part of Varna Ashram Dharma. So, to establish Varna Ashram Dharma, as the head of Varna Ashram Dharma, sannyas, he wanted to establish, he was ordered by his guru, by his father, had told him one of the 4 things he'd given him instructions was to establish Varna Ashram Dharma. So this was first step, taking sannyas. You have to have a sannyasi in the Varna Ashram Dharma. It has to be there. Everything else then may be there, of course, but the sannyas has to be there also. So to establish Varna Ashram Dharma, to establish a preaching mission, to try to keep in a humble state, as we heard the other day when he was giving instructions to his sannyasis. Sannyas means you become the servant of everyone, master of none. Not that now I'm a sannyasi, everyone serve me. Right? Right? You have to serve me now, a sannyasi.
Sannyasi makes people dance and chant.
Does he? I don't know if that's one of the rules of a sannyasi. It was an instruction given to Vishnu Jan Swami when he took sannyas by Prabhupada. Now you have to make everyone dance and chant. But he didn't give that to all of his sannyas disciples, although it would be a good idea. In one sense, yes, it's true. So for various reasons, he took the sannyas order. And who else? I mean, of course you could say Babaji Maharaj, Gorkishore Das Babaji Maharaj was not officially a sannyasi, he was more than a sannyasi. So he was entitled to give sannyas, he was more than a sannyas. Oh. Yes. Somebody's ringing. I haven't heard the bell ring before, that's a new one. Who's there?
One boy came to bring the take
Oh, the pots. Who's there? Come in, come in. Come. Come. Haribol, come on in. Who else is there? You came alone?
Yeah.
Wow. Did you cook this wonderful prasadam?
Huh?
Did you do all the cooking?
No, my mother did.
Who did? Your Mataji?
My mother.
Yeah, your Mata. Actually, Mataji means mother. Give him some Mahaprasadam. Where's that Maha from this morning? Tons of it we got from the temples. Everything was from this morning at the temples we went to. So much prasadam. I don't know who's got it or where it went.
In the bag.
I never saw it in my bag.
Yeah, in the red bag.
Really?
I think so. We did.
I never saw it at any point after we put it away. That often happens. People give me something, I never see it again. It goes in the bag and that's the end of that. Out of sight. Out of sight, out of mind. Oh, not a whole bag. Come here with the bags. What's your good name, sir?
Huh?
What is your name?
Lakshadweep.
What do you say?
Lakshadweep.
Lakshavir. Can you kind of open? Come and get some Maha, Lakshavir. Where are you from?
Mumbai.
Mumbai. Where's your mum from?
Surat.
Surat. Gujarati family. Eh? Nice. Here. Thank you. Hare Krishna. We'll read on. The precise and unequivocal ascertainment of the position of the jiva, and stressing this point as the essential foundation of bhakti, was the unique contribution that Srila Saraswati Thakur tried to inculcate in his disciples and the general public. And don't forget, this is the most significant from the point of view of perception, the point of view of understanding everything in our movement, statement of all, practically speaking, of understanding who is the drashta and who is the drishya, and living our life accordingly. Everything is based on that. All the rest is detail. To help people in different modes to gradually see things in that regards. That's the purpose of Varnashram. It's the purpose of everything, practically speaking, meant to be of religion in this human form of life, to gradually help the living entity to open their eyes and see things in this light. That Krishna is the real seer and we are the object of his seeing. We are the object of his darshan, so to speak. Meant to be pleasing to him, meant to be acting in a way for his pleasure. It's the essential foundation of bhakti. The extent to which individuals, religions and sampradayas recognized, acquiesced to and lived by it was, in Srila Saraswati Thakur's estimation, the litmus test. You know this litmus test? You test a liquid. You have this little thing, you put it in it changes color, and you can tell how alkaline or acidic it is and so on. It's called a litmus test. So it's the litmus test of their genuineness, sincerity and advancement in bhakti. No matter what it is, this was the test. How much we're seeing things as Krishna as the enjoyer, Krishna as the seer, Krishna as everything, proprietor, etc. And we are meant for his enjoyment. Being divisive and certainly unpalatable to committed worldly sense enjoyers and advocates of a plurality of viewpoints, this ontological teaching gave definition to the Gaudiya Math as being not simply another religious organization, nor one characterized merely by high moral standards, but as philosophically distinct from other religious paths and even from other Vaishnava sampradayas and Gaudiya subsects, and from Gaudiyas and others who quoted Shastra but had not grasped this essential point by which Shastra is to be accepted. This is the most profound aspect of our line in that sense. Major difference. Ultimately it's not, but unfortunately most of the time we don't rise to that platform of perception or realization. But that is the thing which he would define the acceptance or the eligibility or the legitimacy of other paths, to the extent that the practitioners are seeing or acting, living their lives with this basic absolute premise of understanding. That we are not the seers, we are the seen. We are meant for the Lord's darshan. Everything is meant for Krishna. He is the seer, we are the seen. So we can meditate on that also. So when you go before the deities, let's look at it another way. Now you've mentioned two things, how this change can be evoked. One was through shastric, just knowledge and remembering, applying that knowledge in our lives, trying to. The other was mentioned here, connect oneself with an advanced Vaishnava who sees like that, and in their presence one will develop those characteristics of vision. What else could be said? How we would transform. The whole process of Krishna consciousness is meant. We use the word revolution. We've mentioned several times recently the word revolution. Normally in people's minds, especially from France, we have some French personalities with us today. If you somehow, we're having a revolution, what do they think it means? You're from France, Eleanor. Where is she? There she is. We're having a revolution. What will a French person think you mean?
Strike.
Well, a strike is not exactly a revolution, it's a protest. A revolution is more than a strike, isn't it? I mean, have you had any revolutions in France?
We have.
I think France is very famous, isn't it, Vaibhava? You're also a French citizen. Very famous for its revolution. I don't know if it's had more than others, but the French Revolution is probably the most famous revolution in many ways. Perhaps they've had more than one, I don't know the history of France. But it's famous. The people get this idea that the French are, no, don't get me wrong, revolting. No. It has two meanings. Take the positive meaning. They have a tendency to revolt against authority or whatever. So revolution. What does it entail in France?
Protest against the government.
More than a protest. It's an actual attack on it, isn't it? I mean, it's literally like a coup. They use the word coup in some places. A takeover.
Yeah.
And the revolutions in France can be quite bloody.
Yeah.
They're not usually just a takeover, kick them out. They usually cut their heads off, isn't it? It's famous, the Bastille, isn't it? For head chopping.
Yeah.
Chop out, all the previous ones had their heads chopped off. It's like a completely change of the guards. But you see, there's nothing really changes. I mean, money changes, things change from one time to the other, but there's no real change. It doesn't improve anything, in one sense, in reality anyway. Maybe some people think it does and some don't. But it's not really a beneficial thing in general. So that type of revolution's always gone on. You had the communist revolution, and the revolution, American revolution. Everywhere in the world at some point in time there's probably been some kind of revolution or another. Trying to improve things is the idea, but as long as we have this misunderstanding of drishta and drishya, there's never going to be any real change. Because we're all seeing ourselves in the center. These people are not giving me pleasure, we have to get rid of them. And if you're strong enough, we'll do it. We'll get rid of them all. And we'll be them. We'll become, the real seers. We'll be the enjoyers. We'll be the center. But then others see you then as an object to their sense gratification, then they'll tear you down. Or the ones you just killed will come back, take birth again, and then they'll kill you in the next lifetime. Like that it will go on. Nothing really changes. But Krishna consciousness is meant as a real revolution. And this is the revolutionary thing. This is a direct statement of revolution. Because it really is a revolutionary statement, isn't it? You are not the seer. You think you're the seer. You think you're the judge. You think you're the enjoyer. You think you're in the center. You think you're the proprietor. You think you're the body. These are all, pretty revolutionary statements. All these are denied in this philosophy which Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj is stating here. This is really revolutionary. Even religion doesn't, maybe a bit here and there, but in general it doesn't oppose these various misconceptions, does it? In fact, in many religions it's just to support those misconceptions, to make the misconceptions more enjoyable. You can have heavenly misconceptions now, you can enjoy in heaven nicely. or you can have better facilities in this earthly plane, huh? Or you can become released from your karmas or something. They're not seeing it any differently. They're all thinking in terms of me and mine. I. My this, my that, my religion, my so and so, my country, my friends, my enemies. Everyone's seeing in this perception. This is the false perception. This is called Maya. This is Maya, to see things wrongly. So everything else, save and except this understanding, is actually Maya. Different degrees maybe, but it's still Maya. It's still Maya. Anyone who sees otherwise is in Maya. So we're trying to transform our perception. So what other ways can that perception be transformed?
Causeless mercy.
Causeless mercy, indeed. Ultimately it depends upon cause. Well, causeless mercy can also have a cause, in the sense that he can bestow it causelessly, and it doesn't have any material cause at any stage. But there's also the jiva themselves, who appeals to the Lord for that causeless mercy. Huh? You have to, there has to be some endeavor on our part. The Lord can give it without any endeavor, you could say. He can do anything He likes. That's up to Him. He can give you that vision if He wishes. But generally it's when the living entity desires. The primary cause of transformation in our spiritual life, the beginning, the catalyst, is our desire. It's not the ultimate cause, that's Krishna, but it's our desire. If we don't really desire change, then Krishna's not going to force it upon us. Luckily we have devotees who are a little bit more, let's say, determined to try to open our eyes sometimes. By various ways they try to help us to see things more Krishna consciously. But it's our desire, when that desire comes, that we want that change. We don't want to keep things as they are. We don't want to continue in our little worlds of illusion, seeing ourselves in the center as the enjoyer, getting upset when anything doesn't go our way, getting upset when we don't get respected, like spoiled children. They're not mature. Any little thing, if they don't get what they want, they throw a tantrum. So adults do the same thing. They throw bombs instead of tantrums, or they shoot bullets, or they speak nastily, or whatever it is. They plot and plan, or they just maneuver in ways that try to avoid it. There's no avoiding it as long as we're seeing ourselves in the center. This unending, inevitable whirlwind will continue. So the simple turn of switch of actually seeing Krishna in the center, our whole lives change. Everything's changed. It's like the lights come on. You're seeing in the dark, then suddenly the lights come on. Everything changes. So how is Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj? There's a famous statement which he makes, which probably somewhere in this book, I don't know. Maybe not. Not everything's in this book by any means. But there's a famous statement about those who think they can reform this world. Do you remember that statement? One who thinks he can be a reformer of this world. Many people think they can reform this world. Devotee, we may also think. But how does that statement go on? One who thinks that they can be a reformer of this world, what does he say next?
They need to reform themselves.
Yeah. One who thinks that they are a reformer of this world is in need of reform. No one can reform this world other than Krishna. Everything goes on by the entire arrangement of the Lord. Not one single hair can move without His arrangement. When somebody appears to be a reformer, they're simply an instrument in the hands of the Lord to revoke whatever is needed according to time, karma, place, circumstance, whatever. The only reform which is required is a reform of our own perception of how we see things. That's the only reform required, nothing else. Another pretty revolutionary statement, you could say. And that is evoked, what does he say? we can evoke that change or that reform of perception by, what's the means? How do we evoke that change? Evoke means bring about. How do we bring about that change? By exposing ourselves to the holy name, the pure holy name, by associating with Vaishnavas, but in this case it said we have to hear the pure holy name of the Lord. It may take time, but that exposure to the name changes, transforms our vision. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shakya. The spiritual master opens our eyes which are blinded by the darkness of ignorance with the weapon of knowledge. He opens our eyes, and this is the process. He gives us the process of pure devotional service, primarily manifest in the form of chanting the holy name. So cultivating the pure chanting of the holy name, the name itself will purify our consciousness. We'll read on. Being divisive and certainly unpalatable to committed worldly sense endurers. We read that, haven't we? Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj said, whether or not their position has strength, all have the right to speak and make personal judgments. But giving up openness to different angles of vision in debate, everyone should instead come toward the truth and see things as they really are. You know, you go into a meeting, even amongst devotees, what's your opinion? What's your opinion? Everyone's got a different opinion. And we're trying to see it in relationship mostly to what we've heard or what we've experienced. Maybe we've read something. We're trying to analyze it in different ways, which is on the path. A pure devotee is like Prabhupada when he wrote his books. We heard the other day how he said that he doesn't write these books. Actually, Krishna's telling him, he sat next to him telling him what to write. He sees himself as just Krishna's instrument, in a sense, to compile these literatures. It's not like he's like groveling around. Look at Bhaktivinoda Thakur. You think he groveled around all over the place to put together hundreds of literatures the way he did? He was directly in connection with the Supreme Lord, dictating to him. He also studied. Devotees also do that. But ultimately the Lord is directing to them. Gaurkishore Das Babaji was illiterate. Whenever he needed to say something, the Lord would give him the words to say. A Shastric statement, whatever. A different plane, you could say, different plane of consciousness to what we are, that's for sure. But practically everyone, even amongst devotees, we all have different types of vision on things. Disagree over this, disagree over that. To get that unity means we truly have to start putting Krishna in the center. At least we have to bring it up. Well, let's try to understand. And the way you do that, one angle of that is, you can think, we were talking about Kirtan standards a few days ago. The first bottom line is, would you do that if Srila Prabhupada were present? Because he sees things in relation with Krishna. He sees Krishna in the center. And he sees himself as existing for the Lord's pleasure. So we learn how to behave for Krishna's pleasure when we're in the association of pure devotees of the Lord. So even kirtan, cooking, everything is in the same yardstick. In English we say yardstick. The same measuring rod is there no matter what we do. Even eating and sleeping, everything. We may not be on that level, but that's how we come to that level, by seeing things. And we may start by remembering, what did Prabhupada do, what do the scriptures say. This is the process of developing that, you could say, perception, along with the purifying process of associating with hearing and chanting about Krishna, which purifies our consciousness of all other anarthas, misconceptions or misapprehensions about devotional service. Like that, the two things, by remembering, practically applying, and then trying to remember the proper behavior and proper association. These things together can help transform the way we see it. And things which presently may seem detestable can become actually quite acceptable. I think we can see that this is Krishna's special mercy. I'm very fortunate to have this difficulty, this challenge in my life. We may not be ready for that, but that's what's supposed to happen. Let's see, drishya. But giving up openness to different angles of vision in debate, everyone should instead come forward toward the truth and see things as they really are. Drishya, darshan and drashta, sambandha, avideya and prayojana, all these subjects should be considered. These topics could not be exhausted even after talking on them day and night for 5 or 10 days. The Drig Drishya Vichar was particularly a rebuttal to the Mayavadi theory of Triputi Vinasha, which proposes that spiritual perfection lies in the vinash or destruction of the Triputi, the 3 factors, namely Gyan, knowledge, Gyeya, the object of knowledge, and Gyata, the knower. The known, that which is known, and that which is the knowledge of that which is known, with all merging into oneness. These divisions called, or parallel rather, with Drishya, Darshan and Drashta, which Mayavadis also intend to amalgamate. Yet Vaishnavacharyas had demonstrated that such homogenization being impossible, the goal of Mayavadis was even more illusory than their conception of the hypothetically illusory world they attempted to escape, that the much touted Mayavad was thus an elaborate logical fallacy. While purporting to explain the meaning of existence, it is ultimately meaningless, and thus a stupendous hoax and a crime against God and humanity. So, taking that literally, you can see why there's so strongly Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj and other genuine Gaudiya Vaishnavas at least, and not only Gaudiya, the Sampradaya of Madhvacharya was strongly opposed to Mayavad, very strong. That was one of the primary factors of their preaching. Ramanujacharya's line also, but not so profound. They had a little bit more, let's say, closeness in their philosophy to Mayavad in some ways. But Madhvacharya very strongly against. And Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj strongly against. Because it's denying people the very opportunity to develop their relationship with Krishna and to see things in reality. Total illusion. They're still seeing things in relationship to themselves as the drashta. They consider themselves the drashta, the drishya and the darshan, all 3. And this is like at least in the material world, most people don't consider quite like, they either deny God altogether, there's no question of, any kind of to do with it at all, and others, there's a kind of a misapprehension. They kind of know that God is the ultimate thing, or ultimate goal, but they don't really know the relationship. But it's not denying his existence as a separate entity. But the Mayavadis deny his existence altogether. There is no drishya. There is no object to be seen. He doesn't exist. God does not exist. There's nothing to be seen, therefore there's no darshan. It's all one. The drashta, drishya and darshan are all one homogeneous existence. So they completely deny the relationship altogether and deny others this opportunity. So a great crime against humanity. The practical application of Drig Drishya Vichar was brought out in Srila Saraswati Thakur's comments on Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. A devotee does not care about his own happiness and distress. He's interested only in seeing that Krishna is happy. In loving relationships in this world, to some degree, you may also put aside your own happiness and distress. Sometimes. Mothers probably with their children more than anything else put aside their own inconvenience for the pleasure of the child. It's probably the closest you get in this world, probably. Loving conjugal relationships may be there but may not be there also. They're not usually so absolute as the mother-child relationship. A pure devotee, and for that purpose he undertakes various activities. A pure devotee has no way of sensing pleasure except by seeing that Krishna is satisfied in every respect. If Krishna becomes happy by giving him distress, such a devotee accepts the distress as the greatest pleasure. When we say giving him, that doesn't mean giving Krishna distress. Giving him his own distress. If that makes Krishna happy, the devotee is happy to be in distress. Whew. That's a hard digestive pill, isn't it? Because you may not be able to measure it. And it's not like therefore you have to specifically make a plan to put yourself in distress and say, well, Krishna must be happy because I'm in distress. It doesn't work the other way around like that. That's our own plan. But if someone other, you're in distress for whatever reason, be it whatever it may be. Prabhupada says it's actually Krishna. Sridham Maharaj in that commentary says, actually it's Krishna's hand. It's not karma for a devotee. It's Krishna's special hand to purify the devotee. It's not karma. But whatever the reasons are, if someone else, that may, if we follow that principle, tattenu kumpam susamikshamanam, follow that principle which was mentioned earlier on, that will please Krishna, even if we're not on a realized platform. We're trying to see things from the platform of, Krishna's direction at least. And tolerating and praying and chant. Carry on chanting. For devotee it means carry on chanting. Tolerate and chant. Tolerate, tolerate, tolerate and chant. Not easy. But that's the process. Where do we get to? Don't know where we got to. Here we got to. Here we are. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was himself the exemplar of this ideal, incessantly serving Krishna without desiring anything in return, and disregarding whatever could have been construed as his own physical and mental happiness. He said, those who are materialistic, who are very proud of worldly wealth and have no spiritual knowledge, consider their own happiness the aim of life, as do the Prakriti-Sahajas. Some aspire to enjoy themselves by sharing the happiness of Krishna. This is the mentality of fruitive workers who want to enjoy sense gratification by making a show of service to Krishna. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati described in Padmaniti the policy of, this is the policy of Padma, Kamsa's mother. The Padmaniti. He writes, in payment for herding the cows, Nanda gave Krishna a little milk and butter to eat. If Nanda were shown the account of the value of the milk and butter against the amount of work that Krishna does, he would definitely give up Krishna. How do we understand that? Having the calculating mentality of a merchant, well, we can see that from a merchant's point of view. You give someone up if they're not doing enough work for the pay you're giving them, right? Even in family life, if the other partner is not satisfying enough, we give them up. Amongst friends, if the friendly reciprocation is no longer there, we give them up. Material world's like that. It's a business deal. Having the calculating mentality of a merchant, Padma can understand how, in guileless love, devotees dedicate all their activities to Bhagavan. Non-devotees cannot comprehend how devotees give their all to Krishna and how Krishna is more dear to Nanda than his very life. Therefore non-devotees resort to Padmaniti for conducting mercantile exchanges with Bhagavan. If you don't give me what I want, I give you up. I'm going to worship Ganesh. I've heard many Hindus say that, who come to the Hare Krishna movement, and then their mother dies, cancer or something. I prayed and prayed and she still died. What's the point of worshipping Krishna? I lost my business after becoming a devotee. What's the point of becoming a devotee? Better I worship Lord Shiva. This neophyte platform, this happens quite frequently, unfortunately. Similarly, Srila Saraswati Thakur often gave the example of Ravana's stealing Maya Sita, citing the statement, Aprakrita vastu dehe prakriti gochar. Spiritual phenomena are never within the jurisdiction of material intellection. He would say, if we make a show of living in Navadvip Dham, listen carefully, we're living in Navadvip Dham, are we? If we make a show of living in Navadvip Dham, we do not live there at all. If we pretend to approach a guru and receive diksha and siksha, then actually we do not go near him or even see him. We are like bugs and mosquitoes on a sadhu that can neither see nor touch the spiritual substance of his transcendental body. We may be in Navadvip, but in our heart, are we in Navadvip? We may be sitting in front of the Guru, but are we actually surrendered? Maya Sita, Ravana thought he'd kidnapped her, but he never did kidnap Sita. Lord Brahma thought he stole away the cows and cowherd boys. He never stole away the cows and cowherd boys. He couldn't touch them. They were Maya. They were creations of Maya. They weren't the real cows and cowherd boys. They were replicas created by Maya, Maya Sita. Replica form of Sita. So it looks like a guru, it looks like the Dham, for whatever we think the Dham looks like. But are we in the Dham or are we somewhere else? Are we still thinking I'm the seer? Are we still thinking I'm the enjoyer? Are we still on the bodily platform of life? The idea is that by coming into the Dham, by associating with those who are spiritually advanced, that we can become purified. By being in the Dham, we hope that we can remember Krishna, or the presence of the Dham will purify us. We hope. But this change of perception is the measuring rod. Srila Saraswati Thakur always uttered words like adhyakshika, empiric, and adhyakshikata, empiricism, with an air of distaste, and repeatedly decried empiricists' attempt to extend their mensural proclivity to the unlimited, and hence immeasurable transcendental personality of Godhead, trying to measure God. Galileo's utterance, measure what is measurable and make measurable what is not, had ushered in the empiric ethos typifying that era. But Srila Saraswati Thakur regarded such enlightened thinking as mere illusion. He would cite Miyate anaya iti maya. Maya is the means of measurement. There we go. And he entirely explained the import of words like adhokshaja and aprikrita. Miyate is measured, anaya by which iti thus. To the many who came to Sri Saraswati Thakur with the premature and immature hope that he would show them God, he would reply, don't try to see God, but try to act in such a way that he will want to see you. And there we have, that statement came from Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj. Our Prabhupada just simply repeating it. A Gaudiya article entitled Venu or Vapu clarified. Venu, flute, means nome, flute. Krishna's celebrated flute is intimately connected with his Vrindavan pastimes. So Venu or Vapu, clarified. One who asks the Guru to show him Bhagavan can never really be attracted to the sweetness of Krishna's flute, from which all Vani emanates. By those who generally want to serve the form of Godhead, request a Guru. By your instructions, please correct and purify me, and give me eyes by which I may actually see. Godhead must be seen first through the ears. First Vani, then Vapu. The ears prepare the eyes. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati did not deny the importance of the quest to see God. Rather, he underscored its importance, stating that to behold the beauty of Shri Shri Radha Krishna's toenails is the only proper utility of the eyes. Yet he stressed that the only possible means to achieve such darshan is by developing a service attitude, which itself is tantamount to seeing God. He said, "It is necessary to seek the sight of Krishna. That should be our first and only endeavor. Our souls can have no real function till we are face to face with the divinity. Sri Krishna shows himself to those who prefer his service to any other occupation. Seeing Bhagavan means total engagement of the senses in his service. In other words, serving the Lord 24 hours a day with all one's senses means being established in one's primal, constitutional position, in which one naturally sees Bhagavan. By the Guru's mercy and strength gained from personal bhajan, one becomes fully aware of Krishna's manifestation, both internally and externally. This is seeing Bhagavan." We're going to finish there, except for one point there at the end where Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj says here, by one's own personal bhajan. That doesn't mean a concocted endeavor. Personal bhajan will be at least confirmed or bestowed upon one by the Guru, one's personal service. By rendering that service, by the mercy of Krishna, one gets that opportunity to receive instruction through Guru, and by putting that instruction into practice, one attains the mercy of Krishna. And he may be pleased to bestow his mercy in the form of giving us that vision or purifying our perception. So we're finished there. Are there any comments or questions? It's a very pointed and deep subject matter. Mahananda Prabhu.
I'm not sure if it was mentioned, but I don't remember. That when Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj was taking darshan, he didn't have glasses. And the disciples were asking him why he doesn't wear glasses. And he said that he's not here to see the deities, but that is...
You read that or heard that?
I don't know.
It makes complete sense. We fight over it. Forgive me for any offence, ladies, but in some temples the ladies are at the back. And they're always, I was in Vrindavan for a long, long time. There was almost every meeting there would be some, a protest from the ladies. They're demanding their rights to stand at the front of the temple during darshan. Eventually they got it in front of Radhasham. It was, back and forth for years, as if we can see the deities. Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj would often stand at the back. Lord Chaitanya would stand at the back, quite often behind the Garuda Stamba, and from there take darshan, or if you want to call it that, be in front of the deities. We have this idea that if I'm in front, I can see the deities. Move out the way. Move out the way, out the way. Because the etiquettes are involved. Okay, fair enough. But in reality, what can we see? It's a kind of, sometimes, it's not always, but sometimes it can be the false ego, which is in practice, in play, rather than a genuine connection with Krishna. Sometimes that you have to judge. Yes. Yes.
Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj went standing near Garuda Stamba. I'm not sure if it's true, but I heard that.
Huh?
Deities are looking at the devotee Garuda, so he wanted to be near him so they can see him.
Another good statement. Well, Lord Chaitanya used to stand next to Garuda Stamba, Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj also, but yes, standing next to a devotee that way. Of course, in one sense you could say that's tricky, a little clever. You stand next to a devotee that the Lord's going to look at. He might see you too. But he can see you wherever you're stood. But what he sees and what we see are maybe not quite the same thing. He's seeing our heart. You're not just seeing, how you're dressed. Now, that's another topic. The devotee may dress nice in order for mentally speaking at least. We would wear as Sunday best. I don't know if you have that statement anywhere. When we would go to Sunday school, church, we will put on our Sunday best to go into the church. Some kind of respect is there. You don't go in front of the deities dressed as if you just came off the beach, with your swimming attire on, suntan, sunglasses, surfboard under your arm if you're from Australia. Right? You don't go in with a cigarette in your hand, do you? I mean, even now, it's considered... I don't think there's a religious institution in the world which approves of people going in with cigarettes, is there? In their hands? I don't think so. I don't think so. Even the Mayavadis, certainly not into a church. You wouldn't go into a church with a cigarette in your mouth, would you? Would you? Do they do that in Brazil, in the churches? It might come to that, I don't know. Maybe, but in my times it would be unheard of. To go into the church with a cigarette in your mouth, maybe some street, urchins, some bums or something, but they usually be either, cleaned up or ushered out. But a normal congregational member would never go to church. They'd always dress nicely, huh? If you had whatever your best, whatever it was, you dress accordingly. Neat and tidy. No, you wouldn't come in with a liquor bottle and start drinking beer in the middle of the sermon. Start gambling. They even say things, turn off your mobile phones. Right? You don't go in there with a newspaper or reading the newspaper in the middle of the sermon or doing your homework. Maybe people do, but they're not supposed to. What to speak of a mosque. More in the temples. I think the Indians are much more lenient than other religions in this regard. I've seen devotees many times sat in the temple reading newspapers. We all the time, even myself, we're on the mobile, sending text messages, reading the news, in the temple room. Common. Very common. But in reality we shouldn't do that. I know pressures are on. You may do it for service, and a lot of times devotees use the mobile for reading the verse or something or another. You could justify that, I suppose. Better to use the book. It sets a better standard, doesn't it? It kind of opens the door that everyone can use. You don't know what a person is doing. You don't know what Ratananda Prabhu is doing on his mobile right now.
Making notes.
Making notes, okay, good. Notes, we hope they're notes about Krishna consciousness. And so you don't know what people are doing, They just stare in the corner with their mobile. Sometimes. Better to have precedents which are more easy to follow, more safer. So, that aspect, you could say, of coming before the Lord to look nice for the Lord's pleasure. It may not be a pure desire on our behalf. We may have mixed desires. We may want to attract the attention of others, which is often the case. We may just like we may just choose what we like to wear. But a pure devotee is thinking what Krishna would like. Yeah. You're not thinking necessarily what I like, what Krishna would like. Therefore he likes you to be clean. He likes you to be neat. You have to find out what he likes. As much as possible. But he's looking at our heart. What is the intention? What is the actual attitude behind it? Not so much the externals. because you may not have the ability for externals. You may not have. We thinking ourselves the seers, Krishna's the seer, but we may think we're the seer and we judge other people according to how we see them, even in the temple or the church. That may not be correct. We have codes of dress to help us to avoid that kind of vision. What I like and don't like. What I think is right and what I don't think is right. How we judge people. But there are codes there to help us to not make a wrong analysis or a wrong judgment. It's quite a science of Vaishnava etiquette, you could say. Anything else? I think Leela Manjari had her hand up first.
How we could understand the proper association? Does it mean devotees or something else?
How can we understand Prabhupada?
No, proper association.
Proper association of devotees. How can we understand what is proper association of devotees? How do we understand it? Well, there's a general point, which is, I suppose, foundational in terms of that association. Svajati. One associates with those in one's own, let's say, line. So it doesn't mean you don't associate with anyone else, but this is the primary thing. You generally associate with those who have a similar like disposition, where in ISKCON you associate primarily with ISKCON devotees. It's not going to be exclusive. We associate with other devotees. Today we were dancing in the kirtan with Gaudiya Math devotees, singing along with them. It was blissful. We're all on the same family in one reality sense. But when it comes to intimate association, we generally associate with those who have a similar inclination, a similar objective. Now, materially speaking, one thing, we're talking spiritually here. So we generally do that. And if we have the proper understanding that we want to advance in Krishna consciousness, that svajati means those who are, or that we perceive, or others have informed us of such. You can always justify your decisions by discussing with your mentors, Siksha Gurus, other devotees about that particular kind of association. And so to make it a little bit more clear that we're not making an incorrect, let's say, judgment in that regard. But somebody you can feel, and there are different levels here, and we're talking of close association. We say persons who have something in common, it's called svajati, do you feel somewhat comfortable with? Nothing's perfect, but somewhat comfortable. Who have a similar inclination and a similar objective towards your goal, whatever your goal may be. Now, if we look at it from a higher platform, it'll be those who inspire us to think more about Krishna. Those who inspire us to become more serious in our practice. Unfortunately, Ravatananda Prabhu, who is one of those persons, is now leaving us. You have to move on at 7:05. Thank you for your association. He's been here almost 4 hours now, giving his association to us. We still haven't changed. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhu. We'll see you around, huh? Thank you. Hare Krishna. So then, that's like from a higher, let's say a higher judgment or a higher measure. Those who help to inspire us in our practical devotion, in our remembrance of Krishna. Now that can be, if it's an intimate one we have a chance for, it's very good, be it within a family, be it within a community, whatever. Arrangements should be made to try to facilitate that, of course. One of the objectives of a temple is to try to facilitate that association. On a general platform, the association of those who increase your faith in your practice, in your spiritual life. They don't create doubts. They may challenge you sometimes to increase your understanding, but they don't create doubts in your mind. Those who create doubts about your practice, even about Krishna sometimes, we should try to avoid their association. Those who create doubts in faith in your guru, you should try to respectfully, depends, if they're blasphemous or something, but if they're somehow or another they have another idea, just try to respectfully avoid them as much as possible. They may be seniors to you, or I, or anyone else, but you have to use a little bit of discretion in regards to this. Those who help you to develop your faith in your spiritual master in the line of practice. And you could go on and on like that. But the association which is favorable to your goal. And if you know what your goal is may be stepping stone goals, or there may be ultimate goals, or both. Stepping stone goals are a little easier to see. If you associate with someone, you're losing your interest in hearing and chanting, you can probably ascertain that that is not a very favorable association, probably. Or you're losing your enthusiasm for service, or you're starting to feel critical, or you're starting to want to watch movies or something crazy. It's generally something's wrong in our association. It may not be that particular person, it might be something else, but you'd have to see. But as much as we can, and that's the purpose of religion, association, varnashram, everything is to try to elevate people to a higher level of association so they can grow in their spiritual lives. And if you associate too, of course we have to learn to associate with those who are less mature, those who are more mature, those who are on a similar platform, that nectar of instruction. We can get some guidelines there on that type of association. But we have to be careful about, not just associating with seniors. We can become familiar, not just associated with peers only. Sometimes we become a little relaxed, a little bit loose, and with juniors we sometimes become weakened. So we have to be careful that we know how to associate with different devotees on different levels. Association, Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj is not there yet, but he'll talk about it, is one of the most significant features in this change of consciousness. And devotees would ask questions, what is, after practicing so many years, I'm still thinking of material things? It's all about your association. Very important. How we had, not just the association, how we associate. How we associate. Not just who, but how. Somebody else had a hand up?
So, applying this principle, how can we come to the town, not to see the town, but to be seen by it? How can we apply this?
How can we apply this principle?
Because we're going all around trying to see this place.
Yeah, we're going to the Gaudiya Math centers to see the Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj's Samadhi, to see Radhakund and Shamakund, Govardhan Hill. We're going to Yoga Pit to see the place of Krishna's, Lord Chaitanya's birth. You're going to Bhakti Vinod's Asan. You're going all over the place here and there. We're going to the temple here, Radha Madhava, to take darshan. How do we see it? Well, we did touch on it earlier on, to some extent you could say. We see it through the eyes of Shastra. We try to read and chant about that place when we're there. Let's give a practical example. We did a little bit of that today, not enough, of talking about the glories of that place when we're there, of chanting the holy names while we're there, of offering ourselves, supplicating ourselves to the Lord while we're there, of taking the dust, showing respect to the residents who are there, and so on and so forth. That's one practical aspect. And to go to those places with persons who are seeing it more in relationship to what it is and not what we see it is. But those who actually have, that's why generally on parikrama you can go on your own. It's best to always have some kind of guide. If you at least take a book with you which explains a little bit about what's going on here, what it actually is and not what we see. So to hear what it actually is, etc., etc., or to hear about the glories of that holy place, helps us to develop a more favorable perception when we're there, more beneficial to, as we heard, you see through the ears, not through the eyes. That helps us, when we do see, to see things a little bit more correctly rather than just relatively, or just, I've been there. People write cards home, you've just been to Hawaii for your holidays, a card of Hawaii, you know, I am here, I've been to Hawaii, a picture of you there on the beach in Hawaii with some local whatever. And, you know, you kind of, I went there. I lost my heart in Vrindavan. You see t-shirts all over the place. You know. I love Vrindavan, you know, and so on. Okay, it may remind us of the idea, but it's obviously we're not on that level. But it's kind of a gimmick or something, whatever, sales line. But you know, to enter more deeply, to be more internal, to think more deeply what's going on here. On the other side, not just the externals, but the internals of, you know, just being a little meditative sometimes, to pray for that inner vision or that inner understanding of why and what it means to be in the Dham. Where am I? What is it? What's happening here? What is my relationship here? Be a little bit more internal. Don't just be external. Externals will purify us and hopefully bring us to a deeper internal understanding or relationship. But and when we hear from those who are more advanced, who do have, let's say, a relationship with the Dham which is not so relative as ours, then it helps us to become a little more tuned in to the reality of being in Navadvip Dham, or what it means to be in Navadvip Dham. Anything else? Yes.
Like we have another, I understand that we're not able to see the reality, but from another point we have also the example of Ambarish Maharaj.
The number of?
Ambarish Maharaj.
Ambarish Maharaj.
Yes, whose senses was all engaged in service, and his eyes was engaged in like observing deities. So, and it mentioned like purifying process. So our eagerness to see the deities, it's like purifying process, purifying our senses. So from that point we should be eager to see them. And another question I have, like I'm engaged here in deity decoration. Like I decorate gopis and
wow.
So just last week Pujari asked us, and we made mukut for Krishna with peacock feathers. You know, when we spent, it was the first time, we spent like 24 hours almost to make it. And I asked my husband, is it pure devotional service? We are just trying to make it perfect, you know. And then we go every day and see Krishna wears it every day.
Thank you,
and
very
happy.
nice.
And is it selfish just to see what they accept or not accept?
Well, no, there might be a tiny elements that are always there until we're completely on the platform of pure devotional service. There's bound to be some degree of element where we're still seeing ourselves as a doer or the enjoyer, etc. But that is the process. Thank you for that. That is, practically speaking, sums up the overall process, at least, is to be fully engaged in devotional service and to think how I can do my service more pleasingly for the Lord. And naturally, I mean, I can only a tiny bit compared to your example, but I can go back to when I was a young devotee, first few months in the movement. I was sent alone to the flower market to get flowers for the deities' garlands and the flower vases. And of course you were told what color dress they were having the next day, so you had to try to get compatible flowers for the next day. And you think your whole mind is absorbed in that particular objective, looking for the flowers which, and you may or may not know, but you're thinking, you're actually thinking in that terms, what would be compatible for Krishna's pleasure? What would be nice? And you get that measure from other devotees. I mean, you might think that, let's say, particular colors go well together. Now, we've all got different opinions about probably compatibility of colors, for instance. I find certain colors are more compatible with particular colors than others, I don't like to see, actually I've seen beyond it now, but I didn't like to see certain mixtures of colors in those days, but that was only my opinion. So you'd ask the pujari what colors would be compatible for the dress, because they're the ones who are responsible, or the devotees in general. You inquire, if you don't know, you inquire from others what will be. So this is how, if you want to please someone, you ask somebody who knows them how to please them. But somehow or other, the intention is to please the Lord. It's to make a nice mukut, or it's to make a nice decoration, or a nice garland, or whatever it is, for their pleasure, not for our pleasure. You're not thinking, well, mate, if I make this pleasure, I like this garland really much, and if I make that for Krishna, then maybe afterwards I'll get that garland. Now, when you're cooking, you may get that mentality sometimes. Those who are cooks, it is one of the challenges of cooking. You may think, well, I like this. After the offering's over, I will get this because I like this. Well, that's not very Krishna conscious. That is something, but it's not very Krishna conscious. We think, what was Krishna like? The more we put that as our modus operandi, or our motivation for doing it, then the more purified you become. And the more you find out what Krishna likes, if you can, that is, the more you can advance in Krishna consciousness, because Krishna is pleased with your attitude. So it's a wonderful example. And I found that when I was doing that service, and perhaps more than any time in my life, actually, I felt Krishna conscious, because I was dreaming. Every night I have dreams of the deities, of waking up, oh no! The flower got, and everything was incompatible, The devotees were all looking at me like this, It was like, absorption. The whole idea is to absorb ourselves in Krishna. It may, Krishna reveals accordingly. So he's certainly revealing himself in some form or another. It may not be in the, in the full manifestation, but it's certainly some way he's reciprocating. You're thinking of Krishna, you're visualizing what he'll look like with this particular crown or that particular mukut or whatever it may be. You're visualizing it. Or these decorations behind him. The deities open, they've got, like, say, I don't know, strong dresses. Maybe they're dressed that day in very strong red and purple or something, I don't know. Very strong colors. And the backdrop is black. Now that may bring it out, but usually black doesn't bring out strong colors. So things like that, you have to think what will enhance we don't have the vision, but the attention of people on the deity. Their attention is on the deity, somehow or another, because it does. Krishna sees us, even if we've got the wrong we've got a misconception. And we do hear that story. I don't know how authentic it is, but it's an interesting one, of a temple which was in the jungle, deep in the jungle. And many days only the pujari would come. Sometimes people would come. It was quite remote. And there was one other person who would come out. It was Jagannath's temple. There was one other person who would come every day when no one was around, and he would throw a stone at Lord Jagannath. Take this, you black man. Bow! And then he would disappear. One day, there was such a storm that even the pujari couldn't come to do his service. Nobody came. Only the man with the stone came. Here, take this, you black man. Boom! And Lord Jagannath suddenly revealed his full form to this stone thrower. He said, you are my real devotee. On a day like this, you are the only devotee who's come here. He reciprocated. He was thinking, wrongly speaking, but, somehow or another to get people's attention on Krishna, somehow or another. Of course, we try to do it favorably, not unfavorably. But somehow or another to attract people's attention. So, yeah, it's a great example. But keeping fully engaged. Why you're fully engaged? It depends why you're fully engaged. If you're fully engaged because you are completely surrendered, you wish to serve your Gurudev, you understand that this was what Krishna wants, then that's a good attitude for a practitioner. It may not be absolutely spontaneous, but it's the right attitude. So Ambarish Maharaj is like our Acharya in that regards. Others like Jayananda Prabhu. We were at the Samadhi of Jayananda Prabhu yesterday in Jagannath Mandir in Rajpur. It's also like that, fully engaged, 24/7. He was asked one day by Dhanavir Prabhu, was not a sannyasi at the time, he asked him, Jayananda Prabhu, how can I make advancement in Krishna consciousness? You know his answer?
I don't know. I'm just too busy to
Yeah.
think about
He
it.
said, I've got no idea. I haven't got time to think about that. He was just 100% engaged till he collapsed. He would only sleep when he collapsed. He didn't like say, I'm going to bed now. When he couldn't stay awake any longer, he would just collapse. He was so engaged. He would always be the first up in the morning as well. You know, we can't imitate that, but these are like, you know, examples of devotees who've, as I say, caught that particular aspect, which is a sensual aspect, is a natural aspect, it's not just essential, it's a natural aspect. Satatam kirtiyantu mam. They're always engaged in my service, always meditating upon me, always thinking how to please me, constantly. So this is one of the specialities of deity worship, amongst others. But it's this meditation that you're always thinking of how to please the Lord in this form, a deity form, always. Whether it's decorations, dressing, bathing, even the way you clean, always thinking, you know, making sure you're clean. Everything is like that. It's a great service, great meditation. Yeah, thank you.
But this eagerness to see.
To see afterwards. Well, that depends on that's the attitude. That's what I said. That depends on the attitude. Why? If that eagerness to see is because you want everyone to praise you, you know, you're hoping that everyone will praise you. Same with giving class. You're hoping everyone will praise you afterwards. So whatever it is, it depends on the attitude. If your attitude is you want to do better, you think you could have done better, you know, you feel you didn't do it well enough, I could have done that nicer, I must ask now how to improve that. This is a positive attitude. If your attitude is thinking, wow, I really did well there, I dressed them or I decorated better than anyone else has ever done before, and I'm sure out of my humility, I will, you know, I won't say anything, but out of humility, I'm so advanced I won't even expect any respect for this, but I know that Krishna understands everything and that this is really the best. You know, if you're thinking anything in those lines, then we've got the wrong attitude. It's not completely off. I mean, you're still doing it, but it's got to be rectified. We've got to realize change is required. Change is required. Yeah, so you can pray for that. Don't worry, Krishna will give you a little jolt to help to evoke that. He usually does. If our attitude is that bad, he usually gives us a little kick, you know. Oh, you'll find that nobody seems to think the way we do or say what we do. In fact, the Pujari come out and say, Mataji, you know, why did you dress like that? You know, he'll give you the sauce or something. Krishna can, you know, he knows what's best for us, so he may or may not do that. That depends, you know. We may not be ready for that, so he won't do that either. But when the time comes, he will. He'll give, if necessary, he'll give us a little jolt. One way or another, directly or indirectly. Just try your best and pray for the right attitude in your service. Your attitude may be pleasing to the Lord. Is that okay? Yes or no? Kind of worrying and scary. You always check with the senior devotees. Check with the Pujari, check with senior devotees. Yeah. Ask them. Don't be afraid of asking others' opinions. Don't be afraid.
Usually they say themselves, here they say like,
Pardon?
usually here they say themselves, like, you should do this. Like, we need
The
to
Pujari,
do
the head
this,
Pujaris, they
yeah,
tell you.
come and they
So that's a
say-
good check, there's a good check and balance. So you have that there already.
After that, we spend so much time, but now I see that Krishna has Mukut, but then I see Giriraj has just one feather, doesn't have Mukut. Jagannath doesn't have. I have to make for him.
Well, that's good if you can do.
More and more.
Yeah. No, that's if that's the mood. If it's positive, it's not. As long as it's not in a critical mood, that you know why they're not giving him this, why that Pujari is not doing that. Don't let that come in. you can voluntarily render service. If it's not accepted, you somehow or another, so what can you do? So be it. But you want to see that the Lord is served, we find out how, but served in a more pleasing way. That's all. Anything else?
There's one more question. Where do we see this Sladini Mataji, she lived at New Vrindavan, and she used to look at the Jagannath deity for hours. And they said only an Amadhyoti can do that, just to look on the deity for such a long time.
Who was that Mataji?
Hladini.
Hladini.
Yeah. She was killed in Africa.
Yeah, she was shot dead in Liberia. Well, I never met, well, maybe I saw her, but I didn't never really met her, but I was told she was a very advanced devotee. And to stand, of course, I mean, depends. I mean, again, it depends on the attitude. If you're supposed to be cooking the offering and just stand there looking at the deities for 3 hours, that may not be the right thing to do, you know. And then you forget, you know, well, no, but I was looking at the deity, I was meditating on cooking for them for 3 hours. Okay, you can meditate on eating. You can meditate on your own eating as well. But, yeah, in her case, I heard she was a very advanced devotee. That's not the only symptom, but it is a symptom. And it may not always be completely, let's say, a sign of an Uttama Bhagavat. There may be other reasons why a person or a devotee has this kind of like attraction to looking at the deities. But in her case, yes. I mean, if it's a regular thing, it's a daily thing, or a regular tendency, she's so attracted towards the Lord, and that's obviously a sign of advancement. If there's some other motivation there sometimes is, I suppose. Sometimes people have, brought up in that way, sometimes they have some maybe a rather speculative idea that the deity is my son, or the deity is my husband, or something, I don't know. There's still something there, but it's not in the mood of service exactly. So if her mood is like it's a heart spontaneous attraction for the deity, or is it an excuse not to do anything else? Is it a hope that everyone will see I'm looking at the deity and think I'm an advanced devotee? These are not very good motivations. It depends on the attitude. Yeah, generally you can't just sit there or stand there, even in kirtan, and just, you know, because you might be blind, you may not even be seeing what we can't see anyway, but even if we look at it from a relative perspective, we may not even be, you know, just dull or something. We may not even be seeing, we're like a mosquito or fly or something, which may pitch on the deity for hours and go to sleep there also. Because the fly gets benefit, but it's not quite the same. Attitude. But as far as I heard, I read the book about her. There was a book written about her. I read that a long time ago. It sounded like she was an extraordinary devotee. Extraordinary. Very surrendered soul. So maybe the Lord's reciprocating with her like that. Took her back to Him. Gave up her life trying to protect devotees in Africa. Yeah, very special devotee. Anything else?
For one who is not in the level of Hladini Mataji or Jayananda Prabhu, what's the point of security on how to act?
How to act?
How to develop an attitude. How's the point of security?
The point of security?
For one to act in the...
Surrendering. Well, just by hearing about these devotees, it helps. When you read about Jayananda, it really helps you, I tell you. You feel like, you know, inspired to try to follow in their footsteps. Mahajana Yena Gatatsapanta. when you hear about great devotees, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says this is very important to hear about these devotees, so we at least develop the desire to follow in their footsteps. You can pray for it, and you have to practically apply the process, of course, of hearing, chanting, remembering, worshipping, etc., in your life. Try to do your best. Follow the instructions of your spiritual masters. These devotees, well, I can't speak directly because I never knew either of them, but I would understand that they were dedicated to follow the order of their spiritual master. And they made that their life and soul. I would assume that was their way of acting. The instruction of the spiritual master, which Prabhupada emphasizes, was all that matters to me, is my life and soul. Prabhupada himself said that that's what his strength was. He meditated on the instruction of his spiritual master and how to fulfill that. That was his strength, that was his drive to do that. So the instruction of the spiritual masters is very powerful. Very powerful if we can embrace that instruction and follow it. It may not happen just like that, but that should be our aspiration, to follow in that mood. And when we hear about these great souls, if we can associate with them, excellent, and get some of that association, serve them, serving the great devotees, service to the devotees. This is our 3 kinds of foodstuffs. Shuddha, Bhakta, Charana, Rena. Service to the devotees. Whatever level we're on, the actual devotee doesn't consider themselves a devotee. An actual devotee doesn't consider themselves a devotee at all. Unqualified. So they pray. Are you coming back to join us anytime?
We hope so.
Huh? Maybe you can come and say hello one day.
We hope so, but we also hope to stay here.
Well, I don't blame you one millionth of a percent. If you can stay here and serve here, you're very fortunate. We're really happy to see you happily engaged here. Although we miss you. We do miss you, of course. What to do? We struggle on. We struggle on it in Mayapur. Struggle.
We heard good news that everything become.
Pardon?
We heard that everything become better and better, more.